sorry. Then he has an ID of 1, for example. Let me just duplicate this actually. Dot, dot, and then I have Jimmy, English, ID of 2, and then I have, let's say, Martha, and his is Hebrew, and the ID of 3. Cool. Okay, so now what is the difference between filter and find? You can see it really easily in the documentation over here. If you go to MDN filter, for example, you will read in the first sentence, it says the filter method creates a new array, right? It's even in bold. It's going to create a new array with all elements that pass the test implemented by the providing function. It's going to pass all elements that passes the test, right? Not just one element, all elements. That's why it's actually in an array, because you want multiple elements, and the best way to store them is in an array, right? So if you have your words over here, and then you say, give me all of the words that have a length of more than 6, it's going to give me an array back with all the elements that have a word length more than 6, okay? So it gives you a new array, and it gives you all the elements that's been passed. And if I go to mdn.find, you'll see here the find method returns the value of the first element in the provided array that satisfies the providing testing function. If no value satisfies the testing function, undefined is returned. So you can see here, the key thing here, it says the first element, it returns only the first element, and then our filter returns all elements that pass the test. So that's the key difference here. Here you can see array.find element that's more than 10, right? Here you can see it's getting 12 because it's more than 10, but it stops. It exits the loop per se, and it's not even going to 130 and 44. It's only taking the first element that satisfies the test. So that's the thing when you guys want to, that's the difference between filter and find. So in our application, for example, if we look here, if I, for example, want to find all the elements that have the language of English, right? I should not use find because it's only going to give me the first satisfied result. But if I want to just find some object that has a specific ID, I definitely should use find because, as we know, a filter, an ID is unique, right? We're never going to get a same unique ID. So we don't want to filter over the whole loop, right? It's not going to be performant. So if I use find, it's going to loop over these objects until it finds, let's say, the ID 2, then it's going to exit the loop. But if I had filter, it's going to loop over everything, and then it's going to give me this object back, but it's not going to be performant because it's going to loop over everything. So if, for example, I have, let's just say const, let's just say English, right? I want to find something that has all of the language English. So I'm just going to do object.filter, right? It's going to take a callback function, and this is going to be my callback function here. I could get my element inside here as the first argument, and then I'm going to say that L dot lan equals English, right? So I'm saying giving my objects and giving me the English language, return to me the ones that has the value English to it. So if I'm going to log now English to my console, let me just do node index.js, right? I'm going to get 2 elements. It's going to return me a new array, right? And it's going to return me these 2 elements inside here. But if I do for find, if I'm just going to do find over here, what's going to happen? It's going to only give me the first one that satisfies the condition, which is going to be Timmy, and then it's going to leave the loop. It's not going to give me Jimmy at all, right? So if I'm going to
filter is find for each.
Sorry?
Filter is find for it. Find is filter for each.
Find is
the other way around.
Filter for each.
The other way around.
other way around. So find, right, only
Filter is fine
satisfies the
for each.
first. Yeah. Sorry, what? No, I don't understand. What?
Both of
Filter.
them, but was saying both of them, find and filter, they loop through your iterable. And find, when it finds the condition, it just exits the loop.
Exactly.
The other one doesn't.
The other one
Okay.
does it. So if I'm going to console log now my L over here, right? And I'm going to do, for example, filter. And let's see what's going to happen. You can see it's looping of all of my array, all of my objects here, 1, 2, and 3. It's looping all of it, even though this is going to be Hebrew, but still it's going to loop over it. And then it's going to return me the condition that is true for all of my objects inside my array. But if I do find, for example, it's just going to loop once. It's going to loop once. It's I see that there is a language English here. Great. I'm going to return this object. I'm going to exit the loop. Okay? And
יש לי שאלה, אז מה ההבדל בין כאילו פילטר למאפ? כאילו זה לא...
filter to find?
לא, לפילטר ומאפ.
Map.
כאילו
map.
סורי שאני מבלבלת, אבל פשוט...
Map is basically looping over everything and then returning you a brand new array. So the thing is, if I do this, if I do const English 2 and I do object dot map, right? And if I just take my L over here and let me just take this away and let me just console log my L, right? It's doing also a loop. It's also doing a loop over here. Wait, let me just take this away. It's also doing a loop, right? But now if I'm going to try to do an if statement like in filter, right? So I'm going to say if L.language is English, give me that. So what's going to happen with map? If L.lan equals English, right? And then I'm going to say return to me the L, for example. What is going to happen? And nothing because I didn't call it. English 2. Let me just console log English.
It will return undefined for some of the...
Yeah, it should return undefined over here, but actually it's going to give me the English. Why is that? Oh, sorry, English 2.
Small letter, capital and not capital.
No, English 2. Right. So here you see what's happening. It's going to give me this English object. It's going to give me this object too. And also it's going to give me also undefined because it's saying basically it's returning to me undefined if it doesn't match this if statement. That's why you shouldn't use map when you want to filter over things, because the ones that are not as satisfied with the condition, it's going to return to you undefined, right? And then you're going to have to delete the undefined here. You're going to have to do another loop to find the undefined values and then take them away from the array. It's just performance issues, right? Because you have to do 2 loops after that. So that's an important thing with map. Don't do a condition over here with map because it's always going to return you undefined. If you need an if statement, you can use filter. Filter will help you do that, right? And it won't return you undefined. Settle? Very important, guys, to understand the difference between filter, find, and then map if you have an if statement, for example, here, which wouldn't work. It's just going to return you undefined. Okay. Let's really try to understand how to create your own filter method, which is pretty awesome, pretty fun to do. So, for example, now let me just delete this. And let's just do it again with the filter, okay? Let's just say filtered, and then I have object.filter, right? This takes a callback function. I actually put it inside here, right? With a nominous arrow function, but of course I could call my callback function from outside. So I could just say filter name, for example, and then each time I'm going to invoke this filter, it's going to invoke this callback function called filter name. I'm just gonna put it outside. So I'm gonna do const filter name, right? And then this takes also a EL element. And then I'm just gonna do return EL dot lan equals English, right? This is exactly the same thing that I did before, except I'm now extracting the callback function and just putting it outside, right? Let me just log my filter to see that it's going to be working. Cool, exactly the same thing. Understand this, right? This is very important to understand. We did this numerous times, that this is just a callback function. I could definitely put it inside here. And you know what? I'm just going to give you a reference over here just to give it to you guys later on. That is exactly the same thing, right? Here, I'm just going to put the callback function inside, right? And here it's going to take an EL. And then I'm just going to say return el.lan equals triple equal English. Nachon, this is exactly the same thing as this one, but here I'm just putting my callback function embedded here right away. Same thing, right? I'm just going to give this to you as reference so you guys understand that. Cool. Okay. So how am I going to make my own filter method? The thing is, we haven't still learned about prototypes and this context in JavaScript. So we're going to have to do it a bit differently. But next week, you're going to learn how to actually create your own methods for array methods. For example, I could write it like this: names my filter, something like that, that I could actually have the dot notation for my array methods, right, with prototyping, but we haven't learned still about prototyping, so I'm going to have to make it a bit differently. So what I need to do is, first of all, I'm going to create my callback method. This callback function, I'm going to actually copy this, and I'm going to have exactly the same logic, so I'm just going to call it filter name2. And this is going to be my callback method, which I'm going to create my new filter function from there. So bear with me. I'm going to say, let's say my filter. That will take two things. It will take the array, this array, for example, that I want to take. And then it also take a callback. And the callback is actually this filter name2 over here. But remember, here as well, it takes a callback, right? Over here also, it takes a callback, except I'm going to have to also give my array, because unfortunately, we haven't learned about prototypes, because here, for example, I'm doing object.filter. This is the array already, and it already understands that this is going to be the array that I'm looping over. But we haven't learned about prototypes, so I'm going to have to give my array here as my parameter, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now, let's just say my filtered, okay? And then just here, I'm going to actually call my filter, okay? I'm going to give it also my array, right? It needs my array. So I'm going to, for example, take my object. That's going to be my array of objects, right? And then my callback, which is my filter name2. Filter name2. Cool. Okay, so now if I'm going to log my array and callback, let's say I have no console logs here. Let's just put this like that, right? What you're going to get is I'm going to get my array, this array that I have over here, the array of objects, right? And then I'm going to get this function. I'm not calling my function at the moment, so it's just saying that this is a function called filter name2, which is addressed to line 15, right? Okay, so how does filter work? As we know, it's returning a new array, right, guys? This filter is going to return a new array, and it's whatever satisfies the test, it's going to push that thing inside my array. So here I could already make a new array called, let's just say, result, right? It's going to be a new array here. And then here I'm going to actually return this result, what satisfied my test. So now what I can do is I can do a for loop. For let I equals 0, I is smaller than my array dot length, right? Because I'm going to loop over this array over here. And then I plus plus. Okay. Cool. So now if I'm going to log my array, with bimkoma I. Okay, I'm going to delete this, right? I'm supposed to loop over my array of objects, right? Because this array I put here, which is the object, and it's basically just looping over these. Cool. Okay, so how is that going to help us? Now I want to call my callback function, which is this filter name, each time it satisfies a condition. So what is the condition? So I could do an if statement. I say if callback, right, has the RI, I'm going to pass it to it. So here I'm passing the element. I'm passing all these elements inside my callback here, and it's going to return me true or false, right? I'm saying here, return el.lan equals English. It's because we know this equal sign, it's going to return true or false if this is true or false. So if, for example, you know what, let's not do the if statement here. Let me just log it to the console. I'll do call back RI, okay? And let's see what I'm going to get as the result. I'm going to get true, true, and false. How is this working? Why is it giving me true, true, and false? Let's understand this. I'm looping over my array, right? Which is this array of objects. I'm giving to my callback a function, which is this one, which is going to my filter name.to. And then it's passing the element, which is first is going to be this Timmy object, right? It's passing it over here, and it says l.lan. Timmy that has the English language, is it true or not true? It's saying, yes, it is true. Then it's going to go to this object here, right, Jimmy, and it's going to pass again that element to my callback function, and it's going to say, is it English? It is true, right? And then it's going to go to that last one, Martha, which is language is Hebrew. I'm calling it here with the array I, sorry. And then is that Martha.language English? No, it's not. So it is false, right? So I can do an if statement over here. I could say if callback RI, if it's a truthy value, if it's true, if it satisfied my needs, then I could say result.push RI, right? So I'm going to get the element and I'm going to push it to my results. Now, what I want to do in the end, I want to return my result, right? And now if I'm going to log my filtered, hopefully I'm going to get what I need to get, right? I'm going to get those two things that satisfy my use case. Does that make sense, guys? Yes, שאלות על זה? Do you see how I'm doing with the callback? I'm calling it each time here, and I'm looping over my array, and then I'm giving each time that object inside my callback, right? And it's returning to me either true or false. Everybody understand that? Please tell me if you don't understand that.
אני לא עדיף אבל לשמור את התוצאה שלו אם אתה קורא כל פעם פעמיים לקולבק?
לשמור את התוצאה? מה זאת אומרת?
אתה קורא פעם אחת לקולבק. סליחה, לא ראיתי את הראיה.
Okay, I mean, obviously, behind the scenes, what they're doing is much more complicated, right? But this is the simple way to do it. So yeah, you can even do this. If I had my, let's just go to my filter over here, this normal filter. If I say, give me all the filter names, all the languages that are not English, right? And now if I'm going to console log filtered over here, let me just unconsole log this, right? I'm saying, give me all the languages that are not English. So if I'm going to console log it, it's only going to give me Hebrew, right? Because it's going to this loop, this callback and saying, hey, are you not English, right? It's going to be false, false, and this Hebrew is going to be true. How does that work? Let's do it with us as well. Let's just do not English, okay? Let's see if this will work as well. Going to the console log, let's see if this works and let's understand why. Yes, it's exactly the same thing.
אפשר לבקש לעשות סיכום קצר של מה שעשית? קצר כזה.
כן.
ויש לי עוד בקשה, לא יודעת אם אנשים עוד יזדהו עם זה. אם אפשר פחות להזיז את המסך כאילו מלמטה למעלה, כי כל פעם שאתה מזיז את כל הקוד,
אוקיי.
זה לוקח כאילו, מוציא אותי מריכוז ולוקח כאילו זמן עוד פעם לתפוס את התמונה. אולי למחוק את השורות הריקות,
סבבה.
כדי כאילו יהיה כמה שיותר קוד באותו מסך. זה היה עוזר לי.
אוקיי, אז יש לנו...
לפצל לעוד קובץ לשים בו את הארי כדי שנראה אותו כל הזמן.
אוקיי, ככה, בסדר? עכשיו לא...
עושה קצת סחרחורת כשאתה מזיז את הקוד למטה למעלה.
אוקיי, סבבה, תודה על זה. אוקיי, אז עכשיו אני לא מזיז את זה בכלל, עכשיו יש לנו כל מה שאנחנו צריכים, בסדר?
אולי אפשר חצי מסך וחצי מסך
מעולה.
של הקונסול של כרום או משהו.
כן, אפשר לעשות גם ככה. רוצים? סבבה. Let's just do it. index.html. And let me just make an HTML. And let me just make a source over here. Script source, which is my index.js. And let me just open it with live code. Can you? Okay. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Cool. Reference error. Very nice. I got a bug. Reference error, line 30. Line 30. Filter name 2 is not defined. Filter.name.2. Indeed, it's not because I accidentally took it out. Right? Let me just take that away. Okay. I'm saving it. I'm going to get Martha and Hebrew. So let's do Sikum before what I'm going to do with the nut. So what's happening here is, as you saw before, a filter takes a callback method, right? A callback function. And I'm also giving it a callback function here with my filter too. So let me actually just take this down here so it can be more understandable, okay? So each time I'm calling my filter, I'm gonna call also my filter name too, okay? And it's going to be corresponded as the name callback here. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to create a new array called results. I am looping over my array, which I'm actually giving it as my first argument here, which is the array of objects that I have over here, okay? I'm looping over them. I'm doing a for loop with that array. And then each time I'm going to loop over that array, I'm going to give this filter to name, this callback, this each time one element at a time. And it's going to give me a value from there. So what's happening at the beginning, I am looping over my array, right? And I'm going to call my callback, which is my filter name 2 over here. And I'm passing it the first element of my object array at the beginning, right? And it's coming inside here. And EL will now represent this first object. And then it's going to say, hey, EL.lan, which is this first object English, is it equal to English, right? So it's coming here, it's doing an if statement. Is it gonna be truly or falsy? It's indeed, the first time it's looping, it's going to be true. So it's actually coming to this block of code over here. And then I'm actually pushing that element to my result array. Then it's gonna come to the second one, which is this object over here, right? It's going to say, it's gonna come here and it's gonna be now array 1, right? Because now I'm gonna loop to the second object. And it's going to say, hey, sorry, it's going to come to my filter name 2 again, right? It's going to say, are you el.lan English? Are you also the value English? Yes, it's true. It's going to go to my results. It's to this block, sorry, and it's going to go push it to my results. Then it's going to go to the third loop, which is the Martha, right? And it's going to say, hey, Martha object el.lan, are you English? No, it's going to be Hebrew, so it's not going to go to this block of code, right? It's going to go out of it. And after that, the loop has finished. So this function has finished, and it's going to return the result, which will have all of my elements inside there. Settle?
That's... You can show us this process in a debugger. It will be more understandable.
Yeah, you think? Okay. So I could do something called debugger. You guys are going to learn about this a bit later on today. Debugger, if I write debugger here, it's going to stop my code and it's going to open this debugger in the console. And here I could actually see exactly what's happening in my code. So now let me just actually open this bigger, right? So now at the moment I've hit my debugger, okay? I have my array, which is the array of 3 elements here, which is my object, right? You can even see it. No, you can't see it inside here. I have my callback method, right? Which is my filter 2, which is this callback over here. You can see the value here. And then what I can do is I can actually step like this. So I could go to the next line of code. So I'm going to go here. And now I have my const result, right? Basically, it's now initiating a new variable called result with value of an empty array. So I'm going to go inside. Now I'm going to go inside my for loop over here at the moment. And now I'm going to go, okay, it's just saying how much is the length. The length is 3, right? Because it's now determining how much is the length of my array of objects. So it's 3. And then I'm going to come inside here. I'm going to go into my if statement. Now it's saying if I'm going to inside my if statement, sorry. Oops. Actually, what happened now? I went inside my if statement. Sorry, I went inside my if statement. So right now I'm calling my callback function over here. So the code is going to go to my filter 2. And then you see EL represents name, Timmy, language, English, ID 1. So this is the first element in that array, right? And now it's going to say, is the el.lan English to equal English? So what's going to happen? It's going to come here. It's going to say, is it truthy or falsy? And now yes, it is true, right? Because this result of this callback is going to be true. And so it's going to go to the block of code inside here. So now I'm going to push that element, which is the first element inside here. So that's going to go here, right? So now it pushed that element inside my results. So now you can see results actually has one object inside. It has that Timmy. So then it's again going to go to the for loop. It's going to loop again. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to look the length of that array if it changed or not. Okay, now it's going to go to the if statement here again. It's going to hit my callback. And now with the element is going to be Jimmy, right? And now it's going to do the same process. Is el.lan, which is the value English, is it equal to English? We're going to look. And now, yes, indeed it is, right? This is going to return a truthy value. So it's going to go to my block of code. And then here I'm going to actually push again that element inside my results. Then it's going to again go here, right? And then it's going to do this if statement, right? It's going to come inside here. And then it says, hey, is el.lan, which is the Martha object, is it Hebrew? It's value Hebrew. Is it English, right? It's not. So what's going to happen at the moment, it's going to come here and it's actually going to end the loop. And then it's going to return to me the result, which is these two objects, which is Timmy and Jimmy. Did that make more sense with the debugger? Or did I just confuse you guys more? Yeah, okay, so I'm actually gonna...
It was good.
Okay, Gary, I'm gonna use the debugger all the time. Sorry, apologies that I put it by words, so I'll use the debugger from now on. You guys are gonna learn more about the debugger today, about it, and it's really great to actually look at your code each time what's happening here, right? We have the other things that we have inside here, which are more advanced features, but you don't really have to think about them at the moment. I'll teach you also about here's the scope, right? What we're going to learn about tomorrow. And then we have this thing that we're going to learn as well. Okay, but so now you can see each time the value of how a computer thinks and how it processes each line of code, right? I'm calling this callback. So it's gonna come here and the EL will be this array of I.
דיבגר להיום או למחר?
היום.
כתוב למחר פשוט בלוז.
לא, I showed you guys the schedule is going to be today, because tomorrow we're going to learn about the tricky parts of JavaScript.
אז הקדמנו ביום, יופי, בסדר.
Okay. Sababa. Okay, right. Okay, so let's do this school thing, the exercise, בסדר? האם יש שאלות על זה, חבר'ה? Okay, I'm going to give this to you guys. I'm going to give you this to you guys to have reference. Please understand this code, understand what callbacks are and how I'm making my own filter method over here, okay? It's very important to understand. Maybe you don't understand this 100% now, but take this code I'm going to give you and then just hit the debugger, write a debugger here, right? Of course, you have to embed it inside a script inside of HTML and then run this index.html with live server. When you hit the debugger, wherever you want your code to start. So for example, I could write my debugger here, and then it's gonna start from, it's reading this code from line by line by line, line 12, blah, 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 and then it hits line 17, and then it's gonna start my debugger, but I don't really care about the debugger here. I care it's just inside this function, for example, right? So now when I'm calling my filter method, it's gonna go inside here, then it's gonna see this debugger, and then it's going to stop the program. And then we could like see line by line. All right. I'm going to also leave this debugger here, guys, for you for reference. Okay. So let me open some kind of school.js. Okay. Let me just take my HTML called school. And let me just, and how to kill the debugger is, I just think you have to just do that, right? Cool. Okay. I have my school. Okay. Now I have to get my array of objects, which will be, I'm just going to copy and paste what I have. Okay. Here I have my array of objects. So let's see what I need to do with this exercise. I saw most of you did this exercise, okay? So that's why I'm gonna go through it because it is important. And whoever hasn't done this exercise, please focus with me, okay? I really want to explain to you exactly how I solve this, okay? And important difference between filter and find will also be here. Where are we? School methods, okay, PDF, okay, cool. Okay, so I have this array of objects over here, which is my school. I have teachers inside here, which has an ID, has a name, has subjects, what the teacher can teach, has their students inside their classroom, which in the beginning it's empty. It's the beginning of the school year, for example, you could say, and they have no students. So we're going to have to assign students to them, and how much capacity, how many students they could actually have inside their classroom, right? This guy, Pinhas, could only handle 3 people at a time, right? So then we have another one, which is Williams, and he teaches history and ethics, right? And his capacity is 2. Of course, you could expand to this. You could have numerous teachers and more students, but that's not just the point here. Then I have my students, which is a very simple array of objects. They have an ID, just a name and an age, right? Of course, you could give more information here. You can embed the address, right? Inside here, you could get more details of that individual student, which you'll definitely do in the future when you're going to learn the backend. You want to actually put more information of an individual person, right? But let's just keep it simple here. It has only a name and an age, and of course an ID. Okay, so take the school object and create the following methods to that object. We haven't touched methods in a long time, so let me recap exactly what a method is, okay? Just so we understand it well. Okay, so what is a method? So if I have, for example, const my object, for example, I have an object over here, and now I want to create a method for my object. What do I do is I have a key, for example, my method, and the value will be a function. So it's basically a function inside an object. So if now I'm going to console log my method here, right? So now this is actually a function, my value here. For example, here, let's just say my I don't know, my name is Peony, right? Okay. So now if I want to get the value of Peony, what I need to do is I'm just going to do, let's just console log it actually. My object dot my name. That's how you're going to access a value inside an object. And now I'm going to get that value, which is Peony, right? Okay, so how I'm going to access my method, my function, the same way how I access my value here. So now my value is Peony. So now what I want to do is my method, right? Now I'm going to get the value, which is my function. So if I'm going to save this, it's going to give me that function returned as a value, but I haven't invoked my function. It's the same thing if I do const my func, for example, and then, my func, right? Let's just say log hi. And then if I'm just going to console log my func here, right? It's going to also return me a function, right? But I'm not invoking it here. If I'm going to invoke this, it's going to go inside here and it's going to give me that value hi, right? Oh, sorry, hi. So it's the same thing over here. If I want to call my method, which is a function, I'm going to have to call it like this. Something like that. So if I'm going to call this now, my method is not defined. My object dot my method. My method is not defined in 45. Oh, right, my console, my method over here, hello, right? So it's going to return me hello. So understand the difference between a method and a function. It's just basically a function inside an object, and this is how I call it, right? Depending on what you do, you will have, sometimes you will actually have your object and you will embed different functions for that object. Okay, we're going to learn that a little bit later on for next week. So that's why I want you to remember when we talked about objects and methods and how this works. Okay, it's very important to remember this and to understand this. Okay, so what do I want to do over here? Is take the school object and create the following methods, right? Which are just functions embedded in this school object. And what I need to do is a method called findPerson that takes two arguments, a type, either a student or a teacher, and an ID. It will return a particular object of that person. So let me just take this and let me see how will that work. And let's see if I should use filter or find over here. Okay, so now I'm just going to take that. Right, and now let me just, okay, cool. So a method called findPerson that takes two arguments. So I'm going to have to make a method called findPerson. So I have my school object here, right? So I'm going to embed a method inside there. So what I'm going to do is school.findPerson, right? Now I'm going to create a key called findPerson inside my school. And now here, I'm going to create a function, right? So the thing is, you could create on the fly also methods to your objects like this. On the fly, I'm going to say, hey, give me a property called, create a property called findPerson, which will be a function, right? So if I'm going to console log hello over here, it's the same thing. I'm going to do school.findPerson, and I'm going to invoke it. It's going to give me hello, right? This is just like a function inside a method. Okay, so what I want to do now is it takes two arguments, a type, either a student or a teacher, and an ID. So the thing is, you want to think about scalability, guys, because now I'm finding a person inside my school object. I have teachers and I have students. Maybe I'm going to create a new key called janitors called workers, called gardeners, I don't know what, right? And they're going to be also placed in the school object. And if I want to find them, they're going to be a different type. They're not going to be teachers or students. So I want to create this method dynamically as possible in case I'm going to have more objects, more different kind of people inside my school. So it takes a type and it takes an ID. So now let's just call my school.findPerson, and let's pretend I want to actually find now from my students something. So the type is going to be students, right? And then the ID will be, for example, 10, right? Okay, so now I have my type students and my ID 10. So how is that going to help me? What I can do is I could check. For example, I'm going to write return. I'm going to say school because that's the object I want to look at. And now I want to do dot students, right? Because I want to get inside this array over here. But of course, I'm not going to hardcode students. I have my students from the function call, which is type. Again, I cannot create it like dot type because this is coming from a variable. This is coming from outside, right? So what I have to do is I'm going to have to write type like this. So now this is going to be school.students at the moment. And then what I want to do is I want to find some student with the particular ID. Like I discussed before, the difference between find and filter. We don't want to use filter at the moment because they will filter all of our student objects over here. I don't need that because I know an ID will be unique, right? So if I hit that ID, I want to just to return that particular object and then exit the loop. I don't want them to loop over all of my students. So I'm going to use dot find over here, right? Which is a callback function, and it's going to it's going to loop over each of my students. And the best thing, guys, is the best practice, don't write EL everywhere. Maybe try to call the variable as descriptive as possible. So what I'm actually looping over here, I'm looping over each student, right? So it's best to write, for example, student. And if I'm looping over a teacher, I'll write teacher, for example. But at the moment, I am looping over each student. But then, of course, actually, students could be sometimes teachers. So yeah, that was actually sorry about that. So I'm just going to do EL at the moment because it could be. It was a person. I use person. Thank you. Much better, yeah. Sometimes I have problems with variable names. I take influence in different websites to check what they call different things. But yeah, person, cool. So now if I'm going to log person over here, what's going to give it to me? Now I'm actually calling this school person, right, with student, which is the type over here. And let's see what I'm getting. I'm getting students is not defined. Students, what did I call it? Students, but it's school.
במרכאות, תשלח לו
I think, כן, אתה צריך לעשות string, לדעתי.
נכון, תודה רבה. Yeah, because this is a variable now, right? And they don't know what the student is. Reference errors, students is not defined. What's happening here is I'm trying to call the students here, which we think it's or the computer thinks it's a variable, but I don't have a variable called students. So I'm going to have to make this as a string, right? Now this type will be a string. So then it should go inside there, right? Now I'm actually getting all of my students. So if now, for example, I'm going to write teachers over here, it's going to now give school.teachers. So now I'm going to get all of my teachers, right? So this is a great way. You're going to do this a lot. If you have an array of objects and you want to find something from there, but then you have different key values, just give it a type as well as a parameter. So you could reuse this find person with all of your objects, right? Depending, even if you have a new type of person, janitors and whatnot, you could just call it with the different params, okay? So let's just go to my students, right? I'm getting all of my students here, great. And now, as you can see, I have my ID 10 here. And that's what I want to do with this find method. I say, hey, return to me person person.id that equals ID. It's now looping over my students, and it's getting the value person.id, which corresponds to 10, 11, 12, and 13, and find me the ID, which I have here, which is 10. So what's going to happen? It's going to find me it, but I haven't console logged it. So let me just console log my value here, right? Because I'm returning the value from my method, but I'm not console logging that value, right? So now I'm going to get that Jennifer. It's not looping all over my objects. It found it the first time, and then it's exiting the loop. Great. So that's that. Now I embedded inside my school object, I have a method called find person, which I can reuse throughout my application, right? So if I'm somewhere over here and I want to find a particular person, I can reuse this find person. Okay, so that was the first one. Let's just delete this console log. Is there any questions on this, guys? Hamza, move on. Please ask me if there's a low move on, all right? Okay, so now the second one is a method called assign student that takes two arguments, a student's ID and a subject. Assign all the students to the first available teacher who teaches that subject and who is not in full capacity. If all of the teachers are in full capacity, console log to the computer, whatever, sorry, no available teachers left. So what's going to happen now is you can see here, I have my teachers, right? Here he has its capacities. It cannot have more than 3 students per class. So what's happening here is assign the first available teacher who teaches that subject. So if, for example, I'm going to give this student and he wants to learn biology, he's going to have to look over my teachers and see if they have the subject biology, if it teaches biology, and assign to the first exact teacher. So he's going to go here, it's going to see, he has biology, so I'm going to assign my student here. And also we have to understand that who's not in full capacity. So each time I'm going to actually assign a student, I have to decrease their capacity by 1, because we have students. And if they have 3 students, they have no more capacity left, and you're gonna have to say, sorry, no teachers are available. So let me just take this and let's just copy this. And let's go here, okay? That's the number 1, and this is the number 2. Okay. And let me just console log here school, just to understand what we're getting, okay? As you can see here, guys, now I embedded this method find person to my object, and you can see here, it's indeed here, this find person, right? Now I have this key find person, which is a function, and now it's actually inside my school object, right? As you can see here. Okay, so I have my school, a method called assign student. So what I'm going to do is school.assign student, right? Which is a function, which is a method, sorry, inside this object, which is going to take a student's ID and a subject. So let's just get that first one, right? Which is, let's just do 11. Student ID will be 11. Sorry, student ID will be, needs to be an ID, and then it needs to be a subject. So now when I'm going to call this, I'll do school.assign student. I'm going to get an ID, which is 11, and then the subject, well, let's just see, which will be biology, for example, right? Biology. Okay, now this ID and the subject is going to correspond to 11 and biology. So now what I'm going to have to do is a few things. First of all, I'm going to have to assign the student, which has an ID 11, to that teachers array, right? Which is over here, teachers, for example, the students array over here. I'm going to first have to actually find that particular student, But a great thing is I already created a method called find person, which I can reuse. So the same thing as the candy store, guys. I can just do const student equals school dot find person, right? And then it's going to be a student. So I'm going to write students and then the ID, which is this ID that I got 11 here. So now if I'm going to console log student, I should get this Howard object, right? So if I'm going to save this, I indeed get the Howard object, the student, right? So I'm reusing this method, the same thing as I'm reusing functions in the candy store, the same way. Okay, so I have my student, and now I need to get also my teacher. I have to fetch the teacher, that first available teacher who teaches that subject and who is not in full capacity. Do you see this, guys? And this and, so I have to find this condition and also this condition. I need to have an and here, right? Because I have two conditions here. So what I can do is I can do const teacher, right? I'm going to find that particular teacher. And what am I going to do? I'm going to do school dot teachers dot find. I cannot reuse this find person because I also have another condition over here. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to find that particular teacher. I'm going to call it, for example, teacher, because this is going to be teachers. And then I'm going to return teacher. But let's just console log the teacher, for example, now, right? Teacher. And here I'm going to get my two teachers, right? In line 60, I'm getting my two teachers. So now I'm going to have to find if biology is included inside their subjects, right? So what I can do is teacher dot subjects. Now I'm going to get the value of my array here, right? I'm going to get now these two teachers with their value of arrays. And now I'm going to have to find if it includes the subjects. So we did this before, but remember this, we have this dot includes method. If we're going to look actually in Google, let's just look at includes MDN, okay? Look at the prototype includes. The includes method determines whether an array includes a certain value among its entries in returning true or false. So now I have an array, which is 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to that array and I'm saying, hey, do you include 2 inside your array? It returns true. I have cat, dog, and bat. And I'm asking the array of pets, do you include cat? It says, yes, I do. But then if I say, does it include AT inside my array? It returns false. So this includes method, you're going to use quite a lot. I know you only use this maybe once and twice back last week, right? But you're going to use this a lot. So just remember what includes does. It's looking inside the array. And if we give it a value over here of what it's going to look at, it's going to return true or false. So this is a perfect place to write includes. Let's go back to my, Okay, so now I'm going to write includes. It's going to look inside my subjects, which is chemistry, biology, physics, history, and ethics. And does it include what? The subject, which is biology, right? So I'm going to write subject. And now it's going to return me 1 time true and 1 time false, because it makes sense because my second teacher didn't include biology inside that array. So what I can do now is I can return the first available teacher. So even if my second teacher had biology, it will return to me the first one because I'm using .find. I'm not using .filter to give me all of the condition that is true. I'm using just find. So it's always going to exit the loop when I have that condition satisfied. So if now I'm going to write return over here, right? And now if I console.log, sorry, you know what? I don't need to console log it here. I'm just having my teacher here, right? If I'm going to console log teacher, I'm supposed to get Pinchas, right? Because he teaches biology. Great. we did that, teaches that subject. And also we have to find out that who is not in full capacity. As you can see here, I have capacity left 3. I have to make sure that I have capacity left, right? That it's not in 0. So what I can do, guys, is this. I'm doing an and condition that these two conditions will both be satisfied. I have teacher dot capacity left. I can do it like this because if this capacity left was 0, and as we know in JavaScript, 0 is a falsy value. So I can say if teacher.capacity left, if it's not 0, right? Because if it's 1, it's still going to be true the value. So that's why it was important to understand the primitive values and how you can play around with it. 0 is definitely a falsy value. So that's why I can say and teachers.capacity left. If it was 0, this would be a falsy value and it wouldn't satisfy the needs, right? So now I still have it.
פיני,
capacity
אפשר
left.
רגע
Yeah.
שאלה?
כן.
ה-includes נותן לך רק true or false.
כן.
כאילו, איך זה משרת אותך?
Remember find actually
okay.
gives me whatever satisfies my condition,
נכון,
right?
נכון, אוקיי.
Yeah. So if, for example, now I'm going to do capacity, which is 0 here to Pinchas, right? What's going to happen now is it's going to return me undefined, because remember what we saw in find MDN, what it's going to give it to, what's going to happen is method returns the value of the first element in the provided array that satisfies the providing testing function. If no value satisfies it, it's going to return to me undefined. That's what's exactly happening over here, guys. It's going to be undefined because 0 is a falsy value. So it's coming inside here. Teachers.capacity left, which is 0. It's not going to satisfy my condition. It's going to return me undefined, right? Cool. So now I'm just going to give it to 3 capacity left, right? So that's why I had to do the and over here, guys. Okay. And now let's continue. So now I did this. A method called assign student takes 2 arguments. And now I found my student, which I found with my ID, right? And also the subject that he needs to learn. And I found my teacher who teaches that subject and who is not in full capacity. Great. And if all teachers are in full capacity, log to the console, sorry, no available teachers left. So what I can do is an if statement here. I can say if teacher, because remember guys, if it was 0, it will return me undefined and it will return me a falsy value because undefined is falsy. So if it's not undefined, go to this block. Else that it was actually undefined, I'm going to console log, sorry, no teachers available, right? Because this will be undefined, it doesn't satisfy my needs. So I'm going to console log, sorry, there's no available teacher. So if I actually have a teacher, that I actually do definitely have, Pinchas teaches biology and his capacity is not full. So I could actually assign that student to that teacher. So how am I going to do that? Here I have my teacher object.
הנה, אבל הדרישה היא לבדוק שאין אף מורה, אז היינו אמורים במקום find לעשות פילטר ואז לעשות array של כל המורים הפוטנציאליים, כי אם המורה הראשון לא זמין, אז צריך לעבור למורה הבא.
Yeah, so what's going to happen with find is it's going to loop over all of my teachers and find this condition over here. If the first condition doesn't satisfy the first object, it's going to go to the second one. So it's going to find the first one, right? But if the first one already satisfies it, it's going to exit the loop.
Okay.
So we have if teacher, good question. If we have if teacher, so if this is actually true that this teacher actually exists, right? That we find it in our find method. So now what I can do is I have to assign that student, right, to this student's array over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have teacher dot students, right? Now I'm going to that array, which is students over here. And now what I need to do is dot push. I'm going to push inside this student's array, what? The student, which is this one, right? I'm going to assign that student inside there. So now if I'm going to look at my let me just console log, wait, else. Let me just console log teacher here, just to see what we're getting, if it's working or not. I have my teacher, and look, you can see that actually I have that student inside there, right? Great, so that is working. But now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to decrease the capacity, right? Like same thing like with the candy store. If you buy something from the candy inventory, you have to remove the capacity, right? So now, yeah.
Also delete the student from the student list?
You can remove it as well, right? We have the different methods that we do. We have that. Oh yeah, we can do that.
By pushing it, did it delete it from student, or you need
No,
to
no,
do
no,
it?
no. No, it didn't delete it from. What do you mean deleted by student?
From the student list. You have a
No, it didn't delete. No, it didn't delete it. I'm finding it. I'm just saving that student object in the variable, and I'm pushing that variable, right? Which I duplicated the value. Remember when we learned about references and values?
Yeah.
And basically now I created a new student in memory, you could say, right? So I didn't even touch that that student.
Is there a way you can do it in the same time, also delete it and also push it?
Yeah, you can. You can delete and push it, but we won't do that at the moment. Okay, let's do baby steps, but definitely you can. If you're interested in that, you could sit with me a few minutes after this and we could talk about that, okay? But let's just understand this, that I'm pushing the students inside this array here, right? Great. Okay, but now, again, I said the capacity, I have to decrease the capacity. So I'm pushing that student, and now I'm going to teacher dot capacity left, right? I could just write minus minus. That's going to decrement it by 1. So now if I look at my students, like capacity left is 2. I had 3, right? Yeah, I had 3. So now it's actually decreasing it by 2. And if, for example, I had my capacity left by 1, right? If I'm going to save it now, as you can see, my capacity left is 0. So if now I'm going to actually call this again, for example, right? I'm going to assign some other student, let's say this with the ID of 2, but now my capacity is 0. What's going to happen? It's going to console log me, sorry, no teachers available, right? Because it was in 0 after when I put Howard inside there, I put capacity to decreased it, sorry. Now it's going to be 0. And then I'm trying to, again, to assign to that teacher. It says, sorry, no teachers available, right? Okay. So let me just put this to 3 again, right? This is, you always should test your functions to see if they're working or not working. Okay, cool. So we have that. So I assigned, that was the second one, I guess, right? No teacher, yeah. So that's that one. And now the third one, a method called assign teacher subject that takes 2 arguments, the teacher's ID and a new subject. Assign the new subject to that particular teacher if that subject doesn't exist in their array of subjects. So now we can assign a new subject to a teacher, right? She did a course on something and now they graduated and now they could actually teach that subject. So what we can do is now I'm going to go inside here. I'm going to comment this out. So a method called assign teacher. Okay, let's do that. School dot, what did I call it? Assign teacher subject, right? It takes 2 things. It takes the ID of the teacher. So I'm going to write ID and the new subject that they're going to have. Right? So now I'm going to call my school dot find, assign teacher subject. I'm going to give the ID. Let's just give the ID one. Let's just give it Pinchas, right? And then let's just say JavaScript. He learned JavaScript now, right? So let me just comment this out so we won't get these console logs over here, right? So I have my teachers here. Cool. Actually, sorry, let me just take this console log here and let me just embed it here, right? Because we've created these methods already. And now, as you can see, I have my teachers. I have Pinchas over here. He has no students because I actually didn't call this, but it's okay, right? Just have my object over here. So now what I want to do is I want to assign from the ID of being, from this ID, find the teachers who has this ID, and then actually embed the subject JavaScript in the array of subjects that they have, right? So what I can do is I can find the teacher, right? I can actually use my method that I had earlier here, which is this find person, needs a type and needs an ID. So what I can do is school.find person. It needs a type, and the type we know is going to be teachers because we're looking for teachers here. And then the ID, which is the ID that I provided over here. Cool. So now if I'm going to log teacher here, I'm going to get Pinchas. So I'm reusing that method. Great. So I have that. And now I'm going to need to push that new subject inside my array of subjects here. But there is a condition, right? If that subject doesn't exist in the array of subjects, if in case I actually have it, don't push it. So I'm going to have to write an if statement here. First of all, let's try to do it just without the if statement. Let's just push it in. Okay. So how I'm going to do that? I'm going to do teacher, right? I'm going to take my individual teacher. I'm going to get the subjects, and then I'm going to push that subject, right? It's quite repetitive that we did before as well. And now if I'm going to console log, for example, my school, after I called this method, let's see what I have. I have my teachers, I have Pinchas, and I have JavaScript inside there, right? But the problem is, if I'm going to call it again with the same thing with JavaScript, right? And now if I'm going to look at my teachers, as you can see, I have JavaScript and JavaScript, a duplicate. So we want to prevent that duplicate, error prone, that if accidentally I'm going to say the same subject, I want to create the if statement just if it's not included there, right? So we could do an if statement. So I can say if not teacher.subjects.includes the subject. So remember, this includes return truly or falsy, right? So I'm saying if it doesn't exist, if it's falsy, that I don't have this subject, right, with the bang operator. If I did it like this, is going to be truthy, but I want to say if it doesn't have it, then what you want to do is you want to push it. And then you say else, you can say, for example, you can console log, he already teaches it. So now if I'm just going to delete this, this is syntax error, else is unexpected.
Brackets.
Yeah, brackets
curly
over here.
brackets.
Yeah, sorry about that. Like
תוריד את
that.
הנקודה פסיק.
Unexpected end of input 89. Ooh, let's see. Here I have this. I'm not closing this, Nahon, so I have to close it here. And now it's okay. Right now I have my teachers, students. Oh, not my students. Sorry. My teachers, Pinchas, right? He has JavaScript. Great. But if I'm going to call it again, now it's going to come inside here that I have JavaScript, and it's going to say, if I don't have this subject inside my teachers, my subjects array, right? So now if I'm going to save it, it's going to say he already teaches it. So it's not going to go to this if statement. Okay, guys, yes, she'elot al ze? I know some of you haven't done this, but most of you have, okay? It's very important to get reacquainted with methods inside objects. And then we found the difference between find and filter. And also we relearned what we can do with includes, right? And then of course, how to do stuff inside an array of objects and how to change it. בסדר? I'm going to... כן, כן.
זו הדרך הכי טובה להתמודד עם סוג של מאגר נתונים כזה? בשיטה כזו, בדרך כזאת, כמו שעשינו בתרגיל הזה?
You mean to put a method inside?
כן, באופן כללי, כל ההתנהלות הזאת דרך JavaScript.
There's two ways to do it. There's two ways. There's different design patterns. I'm showing you two ways to do it. You could create functions by itself, right, that we did before without putting it actually in an object. And also you could actually create the methods or the functions inside that particular object. You can do either way. You can choose what is best for you. I'm just exposing you different ways to do it, okay? If you don't want to do it with methods, you can do with objects as well. But the thing is, what happens here is, guys, if I'm going to create a method, for example, here, this is only going to be connected to my school object, right? Because I'm actually putting this as a key value inside my object. I cannot use this method anywhere else in my application. It has to be always connected to the school object. So if you want to keep your functions private, that only this function here will only be included for only this object, you could create a method for it because it only includes it inside that object and you cannot reuse it anywhere else, okay? But if you have a function that you want to expose to the world, expose to your application that anybody can use it, you can just create a function and not tie it inside a method. I just wanted you to relearn this because next week we're going to learn about the this keyword, and we're going to see how it behaves differently inside a method and inside a function. Okay, so that's why I want you to relearn how to do with methods. This is just a design pattern. If you want to keep your functions private, you put it inside this object. But if you want to expose your functions to other places, you could just create a function. Okay, but we're also going to learn tomorrow about scoping and hoisting. And you will understand a little bit more about how JavaScript can access different variables inside your application, okay? But yeah, cool. So hopefully that was understandable, guys. I'm going to give you also the filter method, what we did over here, okay? Please go over this. You will get reinforced exactly how filter works, okay? I have a job to you, try to do find as well. Try to do the same method with find, to create your own find method. Remember, find exits the loop and just satisfies the first condition met. So you could just refactor this a little bit to actually do a find method as well. But understand this, you understand how filter works really well, and then you understand the power of callbacks, and then why actually when you create array.filter, it provides a callback, which is exactly the same thing as we did over here. So you understand maybe callbacks a bit more as well. Okay, I really recommend that you go over this and understand this. Hit the debugger and then go line by line and understand what's happening in the console, okay? Cool. So guys, I'm gonna open the rooms. Let's start coding. Like I said, the schedule of today is going to be